May the words of my lips and the thoughts of all of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Now, sometimes standing in this pulpit, I have to pinch myself when I consider that I'm looking directly at a Roman arch. Here we are in Corbridge, where the reality and the reach of the Roman Empire is all around us. A Roman arch, the Roman town, a Roman wall. Here on the frontier of that vast empire, we instinctively feel the power of Rome, the power of Caesar. Somehow, standing here today, 2,000 years ago, is very close. John's Gospel presents us with the drama of a single, isolated Jewish man standing before the imperial might of Caesar's representative. Yet here today, 2,000 years on, we come to worship that man. And as for Caesar's representative, well, he is now the most notorious Roman ever to have lived by far. For today, all over the world, as has been done for centuries, in every language, and wherever Christian people gather, we all say, he was crucified also for us under Pontius Pilate. He suffered under Pontius Pilate. Only Pilate could have known what his actions would lead to on that day. And so this morning we continue to think about the encounter between Jesus and Pilate, for here two worlds meet, God and Caesar. God in the presence of Jesus, the Word made flesh, Caesar in the person of Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor. Last week we considered Pilate's question, what is truth? Today the stakes become higher. You have the text before you in the leaflet. You may wish to follow as I take you through it. And I want you to notice, first of all, that while Pilate seems dumbfounded by the meaning and notion of truth, paradoxically, we'll see that he keeps on testifying to the truth in word and deed. So this morning's narrative begins with Jesus inside Pilate's residence being flogged. Now, normally, flogging was undertaken after the sentence of death. Here, John moves it earlier. Perhaps flogging, which in Roman times was extremely severe, might elicit the pity of the crowd. But Pilate does more. His soldiers dress Jesus up. After all, the crowd said that he claimed to be a king, the king of the Jews. So the soldiers make for him a crown out of thorns and press it down on his head. Then they take a purple garment, purple being the imperial colour of Rome, and they throw it around him. Then the soldiers approach him one by one, as if they were coming to give him homage. But when they reach him, instead of worship, they smash him in the face. This is not mockery, as in the other Gospels. This is violent hatred. This is John's theme of light and darkness clashing head on. Then Pilate theatrically brings Jesus outside of his residence to the crowds, with his crown and his robe, having been flogged and hit, and presents him. Behold the man, in Latin, ecce homo. Behind John's narrative seems to lie the creation story in Genesis. For it was on the second half of Friday, the sixth day of the week, perhaps about noon, that God first said, "Let us make man and woman in our image, our likeness." So now, the second Adam, the human being who in his own body unites divinity and humanity perfectly, is brought forth. Pilate is being prophetic. He is witnessing unknowingly to the truth. Behold the man who bears the perfect image of God, the man whose obedience reverses the fall, the man who is love incarnate. And the crowd's response is, "Crucify him." This is what human beings do to God. It's what they do to perfect love. Oh, how terribly have we fallen. And then Pilate states his verdict for the second time. Once already, as we heard last Sunday, he has declared Jesus' innocence. So again he says to the crowds, "I find no case against him." But then the crowds ramp it up. He must die because he has committed blasphemy. He claims to be the Son of God. And I want you to notice what Pilate's reaction to that is. We're told that he was more afraid than ever. Pilate, all-powerful Pilate, afraid, becoming more and more afraid. Perhaps Jesus' previous words, "My kingdom is not of this world," and now the accusation that he was Son of God was getting to Pilate. Remember, this is Caesar's representative, and Caesar was meant to be divine, a Son of God. So once again, Pilate takes Jesus back indoors and privately says to him, "Where are you from?" It's a profound question. It suggests something cosmic, something other. Who is this man? But Jesus is silent to that question. And that silence is uncomfortable for Pilate. This is the silence of real power. By being silent, Jesus is presenting Pilate with a choice to decide for truth or to collude with lies. It's a choice we all face from time to time. It's a choice, certainly, that all governments and leaders face. But then Pilate tries to assert himself. "Do you refuse to speak to me? Do you not know that I have power both to crucify you or to release you?" Oh yes, Pilate had all the power in the world, so he thought. Jesus both recognizes the legitimacy of Pilate's power, but also the source of that power when he says to him, "You would have no power over me unless it was given to you from above." Earthly political power indeed comes from God. The issue for all political leaders is how they use that power, for good or for evil. So Pilate comes out to the crowds again and a third time uses his power to try to release Jesus. But this time the Jewish leaders play their trump card. They say to him, "If you release this man, you are no friend of Caesar." To that, Pilate once again brings Jesus out. And the text is ambiguous here. Either Pilate himself sits down on the judge's seat on Gabbatha, or the Greek could mean he sits Jesus down on the judgment seat. If the latter, then this is a mock coronation. Here now is this king on his throne. It was noon, John says. The sun is at its highest. But here is the true light of the world. And Pilate is once again perhaps both cynical and prophetic. "Behold your king," he says to them. "Crucify him," the crowds scream again. "Shall I crucify your king?" asks Pilate. Now remember that Jesus has been accused by the chief priests of blasphemy. But now his very accusers themselves commit an outrageous blasphemy. We have no king but Caesar. In rejecting Jesus, they are now rejecting their God. This is apostasy of the highest order. And Pilate gives in to it. Pilate knew Jesus was innocent, yet he was powerless to act justly because he was being worked on by the crowd and accused of being disloyal to Rome. He didn't exercise his power to seek justice. He handed the innocent one over to death by crucifixion. Pilate is massively compromised. Jesus is the one with true power. His words, his silence, judge Pilate and confound Rome. One word stands out for me from all of this today, and that is the word behold, or look, or see. Pilate unknowingly but prophetically witnesses to Jesus. Behold the man. Behold your king. And today in worship we behold. We behold the true human being, the true Israelite, the second Adam. We behold the true King, whose peaceable kingdom is not of this world, and who reigns in love. And as we shall see next week, the King who reigns not from Pilate's seat in a Roman palace, but who reigns from a tree. The King who gives his life and his obedience to stand for us all.